All right, so the next part is for marking. So for marking in IELTS speaking, we have 4 main criteria. The first one is pronunciation. You have to make sure people can understand you. Okay, your pronunciation doesn't have to sound like a native speaker, but you have to make sure the other person can understand. Okay, lexical resource just means vocabulary. So this is what we're talking about: vocabulary. Try to demonstrate a range, but try also not to make mistakes. Okay, the third one is grammar, so grammatical range and accuracy, and the last one is fluency and coherence, which means you speak fluently. Try not to stop in the middle. Try not to get stuck on a word. Okay, so in more detail, this is what the 4 criteria mean. Okay, so fluency, talking without pauses or hesitations. Okay, vocabulary, try to use a range of words or paraphrasing. Use less common vocabulary. Yes, try, but I wouldn't say that's really important. So, students always like to use big words, but it's very often that, students use big words, but then they make a mistake. So that's not good either, right? Grammar. So for this one, when you practice, you can try to record yourself and then go back and listen to see what grammar mistakes you made. Okay, and pronunciation, see, it doesn't matter about the accent or it just makes sure that the other person can understand you. Okay, all right, so remember here are just a few tips before we practice. So first one is keep it simple. Okay, keeping it simple just means, because English is a very direct language. People say what they think directly. They usually open with like a topic sentence. Okay, so try not to go around in circles and then try and let the examiner guess what you're trying to say. Just come out straight with your main point. Okay, and that way it's actually easier to stay on topic. Okay, so don't get sidetracked. Sometimes, especially for part 2, because we have a long time, people start to go off on a tangent and talk about other things that are not related. Okay, so always keep the topic in mind and give some background. That's always good, especially when you feel you don't have enough things to say, which means that you shouldn't assume the examiner knows anything you're going to say. Okay, so for example, if the examiner wants you to talk about a famous singer, okay, so if you want to choose like Jolene Tsai or something, okay, pretend the examiner doesn't know who Jolene Tsai is. Okay, I'm pretty sure he or she knows, but you can start off by saying like, oh, Jolene is my favorite singer. She's from Taiwan. She's very beautiful. She's not very tall, but she has beautiful features, big eyes, and she works really hard, and she's very talented. She's multi-talented. Give some background and then move on to why you like him or her. Okay, so always give a little background in the beginning, especially when you don't have enough ideas. All right, and think of related experiences in your past that you can use. So these are good examples. Don't get stuck on a word. I mentioned before that fluency is very important. Okay, so especially you guys who tend to think, in Chinese. So I know your brain is thinking in Chinese and you're just trying to translate it, right? But try not to do that. And if you do get stuck, just quickly replace that word with another word that you know. Okay, so it doesn't have to be exactly the same. As long as people understand the main gist, that's fine. Okay, don't get stuck on this word and you're like, I have to get that word. No, just move on. Okay, replace. Think of something else to say. Correct your mistakes. Yes, it's okay. If you realize in the middle of a sentence that you made a mistake, it's okay to go back and backtrack a little bit. Like I do it all the time too. Okay, finish strongly. So sometimes you think like, oh, what was I saying? But then when you see the time is almost up, try to go back to the topic. At least finish with a strong ending. Okay, and remember, this one is very important. It is not a knowledge test. Okay, IELTS is not a test to test your IQ. It's not important that you know a lot or you don't know a lot. We're not testing you on what you say. Okay, it's not the content, it's how you say it. If you can say it well, fluently, then that's good enough. Okay, we're not looking for the smartest person to say the best answers. Okay, so just feel free, whatever you're thinking, just say it. Okay, and just remember, I mentioned before, if you don't understand the question, you can ask the examiner to explain a part of the question. Okay, like, I'm not sure what this word means. Can you explain it? But you can't get the examiner to explain the whole question again for you. Okay, Arthur, can you do the last question for me? Do you usually do the same things at the same time each day?
I would say some of them because
Okay.
some class we have in each day, like learning support in the morning. So this time is usually teacher will announce some annunciations, and maybe we can have some activities in the morning so teacher can get our energy in to the class so we can more focus on the class. And another thing, important things is if we have problem, like the problem and the question in homework, we can ask some question at a time and teacher can help us in that time. And we have this class every day. So Monday to Friday, we have this.
Okay. So that's your answer?
Yeah.
Okay. So you mentioned the first class of each day, right? The teacher makes announcements, gets you prepared, maybe psyched up for class. Okay, so that is good to start off with. But remember, the question is, do you usually do the same things at the same time each day? So you just mentioned like one example. Do you know what I mean? So yes, you do. But it's just for this first class in the morning. What about all the other things in the day? Do you do the other things like they're all the same each day? Or not really?
Not really.
Right. So you can say that at the beginning, like, yes, some things are the same, but then you still need to move on to the other things. But then some other things are different. Okay, like in the afternoon, on Mondays, we have PE class, and on Wednesdays, we have art class, things like that. Okay, so that's why I asked you, like, are you finished? Because that's a good beginning, but it's not really a full answer to this question. Do you understand?
Yeah. Okay.
Yes. Okay. So I know because it's part one and you just given the question, you have to say it directly. But you still, before you speak, you can think for about 5 seconds and try to think about all the things you can say. Okay. All right. So part one questions are pretty much like maybe 3 sentences, I would say is a good amount. Okay. So part one questions about 30 seconds, 20 to 30 seconds is good enough. Okay. So try to get into the main point. Okay. So don't give too much background for part one because you don't have enough time. Just answer the question and then give some support. Okay. So try to make sure you say everything that you need to say in that short amount of time. Okay, so that's what you need to practice as well, timing yourself. And just some final tips before we go. Don't be nervous, but it's very hard, okay? But the more you practice in real life, the less nervous you'll be, okay? Any answer is better than no answer, okay? So don't just sit there. Like some students, when they first practice, they're like, oh, I don't know. I have no idea. Okay, you can't say that, all right? Never learn scripted answers. So yes, I give you some example answers. There are lots of answers on the internet. Don't memorize them, okay? You can memorize some good words you want to use, but don't memorize the whole sentence. One way to practice yourself is, of course, record yourself, okay? If you can find someone to practice, that's great. But if you can't, just record yourself and mark yourself according to the 4 criteria, because they are the most important things, okay? Go back, correct your mistakes, look up words you want to use or replace, and then practice again and again to make your speech even better, okay? To build confidence. And for people who are quite young, like if you're still a student, you don't have much life experience. So it's really hard for you to think of ideas, right? Do research. Ask other people about their experience. Okay, so that's why I always like to meet new people, talk to them, because these are all things I can use for my IELTS. Okay.